Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem amma ba'd. Now we are moving on to huruful ma'ani. Well, no, sorry, we are in huruful ma'ani. We're going to aw. So aw is for or. Aw li tanawuli ahadil madhkuran. You mentioned two things, and for the rule to apply to one of them is called aw. So one of the two things. Example: وَلِهَذَا لَوْ قَالَ هَذَا حُرٌّ أَوْ هَذَا. Yes, two slave, and he says هَذَا حُرٌّ أَوْ هَذَا. What does this mean? The hurriya applies to one of the two. كَانَ بِمَنْزِلَةِ قَوْلِهِ. This was as if he said أَحَدُهُمَا حُرٌّ. And because this is now mujmal, what does the mujmal need? A bayan. كَانَ لَهُ وِلَايَةُ الْبَيَانِ. He'll have the choice to say who he wants to free. Do you understand? Yes? So aw means only one of two things, and one or two, can you figure out context? No. So now you can do bayan. He has a choice to decide who he wants to free. وَلَوْ قَالَ وَكَّلْتُ بِبَيْءِ هَذَا. This needs to be understood. What does wakkil mean? Tawkil. To make somebody a wakil. Bibay. So I am making either you or you a wakil to sell this slave. Wakkaltu. I am making hada or hada a wakil to sell this slave. Yes, all the examples slaves coming up with this was one of the common transactions you have in those times. Yes? Okay. So he says here, if I say I'm making you or you, either one of you, the wakil to sell this slave. Who is the wakil going to be? So one of them with the wakil. Now each one of them can do it. And if one of them does it, yes, that means now the wakal is finished, transaction is finished. This becomes null. This has expired. When one of them does the tawkil, then the transaction is expired. Meaning this tawkil is expired. If perchance the slave was returned because of khiyaru aib, khiyaru shart, iqala. Yes? ثُمَّ عَادَ الْأَبْدُ إِلَى مِلْكِ الْمُوَكِّلِ. The other one can't say, well, I was also made wakil at one time, I'm going to sell it now. Because this tawkil means only one of two, not both of them. So one of them executed the wakala, it's finished, expires. If the slave comes back to the master, he can't say, well, you made me wakil once upon a time, so therefore I'm going to execute my wakala now. So no. Then only one of them was the wakil for that transaction. He became the wakil. You no longer have that choice. لا يكون للآخر أن يبيعه. The second person does not have the authority to sell a slave. Example number 3. ولو قال لثلاث نسوة له. He has 3 women, 3 wives. هذه طالق أو هذه وهذه. Now this is, I think one of the nuskhas had a bit of problem with the aw and the waw. Is it right? هذه طالق أو هذه وهذه. Right. So now, how do we do that waqf? He says here, هذه طالق. So he's saying here, طلقت إحدى الأوليين. So now it is هذه أو هذه وهذه. So 2 will get divorced. But one of the first 2 and the third one. Yes? وطلقت الثالثة في الحال. Are you following? لإنعطافها على المطلقة منهما. Because that is atf on the one who amongst them is talaq. Yes? Are you following? So he says here, هذه طالق أو هذه وهذه. Now you got 1. Sorry, from here. So you got 1, 2, and 3. So 3 is mutallaqa fil hal, and between 1 or 2 each one of them. And because it's mubham mujmal, you have to give bayan. He will decide which one of them talaq. Yes? This is as if he said, إِهْدَاكُمَا طَالِقٌ وَهَذِهِ. Yes? What's the question you could raise here? Why can't you say هَذِهِ طَالِقٌ أو هَذِهِ وَهَذِهِ? She is divorced, or this and this. So 1 is divorced, or 2 and 3. And he can choose, I just divorced 1. So in that case, only 1 gets divorced, not 2 and 3. Why can't you do it that way? Maybe in the Hasham, maybe in the Shuruhat. If you want to look for it, you can look for it. But that's a question you can have. No? If you do that like this, make the second 2 as one group. So either 1 is taliq, or 2 and 3 are taliq. You get it? You got different ways of doing it, but this is one argument. We'll have a look at it later. Okay, number 4. Let's stop here, inshallah. Okay? Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilaik. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala Rasulihil Kareem, amma ba'd. So we're moving on, or we're actually continuing from the previous lesson. So what we have is, we have two very similar masail regarding the particle aw and the particle waw. So in the books they have hadihi wa hadihi. I'm going to put some names onto this so it becomes a bit easier. We have two masla and four possibilities. The first two masala are regarding talaq. The second two are regarding al-qasam. Okay, what's the first masala? If a person says Fatimatu taliqun aw Khadija wa Zainab, you can say this, you can interpret it in two ways. You can make Fatima taliqun aw Khadija, that's ma'tuf alayhi ma'tuf, that becomes one slot. And then Zainab is atfan Fatima. Yes, so you bracket it as I've done it here. So in this situation, what's going to happen? One of the first two is going to be mutallaqa, and the second one, the third one, Zainab, definitely mutallaqa. So her talaq is fil hal, and he has khiyar between the two of them, he has wilayatul bayan. This is one option. A second option is, you do like this, Fatima is on her own, she becomes mutallaqa immediately. No, Fatima taliqun is one option, or Khadija wa Zainab taliqun. So either you choose Fatima as taliq, or Khadija and Zainab as taliq. So in this situation, who gets talaq? Either Fatima, or both Khadija and Zainab. Are you following me? So basically we made these two together, and so the choice is between Fatima or Khadija and Zainab together. Are you following? Next two masail are regarding kalam. It's not kalam, basically a custom and oath. Just check if the speaker's on, the mic's on. The next two is regarding, if you say, I will not speak to somebody, take an oath. Now in this situation, what do we say? La ukallimu Fatima aw Khadija wa Zainab. The same thing, the aw comes in the middle of the three, and the wa comes in the end. Yes? So how do we do the atf? Same thing, you can go, the same structure, the top one. You do atf of the first two together, and then Zainab becomes atf and Fatima. Are you following? And the last scenario is, you say Fatima is on her own, and then those two become atf. Now all of these are valid, because all of these the A'immah have opinion. So for example, the top masala, all the A'immah, all the Ahnaf said this is what the masala is good. The second one, Imam Farrah, who's a Nahwi, I think I mentioned that in the last video. Why can't it be this? He goes upon this, that's his opinion. In here is Imam Zufar's opinion, and this is our Imam Thalatha opinion. Now what's all the implications? Let's go back over the implications again. I think we went through the first two already. In the second one, what's the implication going to be in the second two masail? In the qasam. So we have scenario number one, well, masala 1A, 1B, 2A, and 2B. Now in 2A, what we have to remember is, when you have aw in a negative, it means eat none of. It's not for ahadil madhkurain, it's for umum now. If I said, I am not going to eat, let's say I am not going to lie or commit zina. Yes? So what's he not going to do? Both of them. Are you following? Well, I'm not going to do either one of them, basically. So if I do one of them, I've got to get my promise. Yes? So I'm not going to feed you on Monday or Tuesday. What does that mean? I'm not going to feed you either day. So if you feed them any one day, you're going to get what your words are. Fine? So in this situation, in this masala, so in the top masala, what's going to happen? In scenario 1.A, what happens in 1.A? Fatima and Khadija, one of two of them is talaq. Immediate, but it's a choice between the two of them. And Zainab becomes mutallaqa. In 1.B, he's got a choice between two things. Either give Fatima talaq, or Khadija and Zainab, both of them talaq. Because the choice is between this and this. In 2A and 2B, slightly different. Why is it different too? Because this is affirmative, this is negative. And when you have aw and negative, it's slightly different. So Imam Zufar rahmatullah, his qiyas is, the same way we then add for the first two together. We put Fatima or Khadija in 1.A, Fatima and Khadija ma'tuf alayhi ma'tuf to go together in one group. So even in kalam, Fatima and Khadija will be together as well. What does that mean? So what will happen now? La ukallimu Fatima or Khadija. So he's taken an oath. I will not do two things, because what's waw for? Jam'i, isn't it? So I'm not going to do jama' between bracket, alif and bracket da. So he's not going to do kalam to Zainab and either of these two. So when will the qasam break in 2.a? He has to do two things, speak to Zainab and either one of these two. Because his qasam is, I am not going to do jama', wa it's a jama'. I am not going to do jama' between speaking to either of Fatima and Khadija and Zainab. So if he speaks to Zainab alone, will the qasam take place? Will the qasam break? No, because it's wa it's a jama'. He hasn't done bracket 1, bracket alif. If he speaks to both Fatima and Khadija, but not Zainab, qasam break? No, because he hasn't done both. If he speaks to Zainab and any of these two, because I will mean any of these two, I'm not going to speak to any of these two, then the qasam will break. If you do atf that way. Does that make sense? Astaghfirullah Rabbi. And if you have, you do 2.b scenario, and you do the atf al-Fatima, what will happen now? He would break his oath if he does either of, because the now means either of this, either bracket A or bracket B. And in the top example, because the atf is having two brackets, is I will not do A and B. Are you following? So what's the masla going? How is it going to be different? If he speaks to Fatima, does he break his qasam? Yes. If he speaks to Khadija alone, only Khadija, is the qasam broken? If he speaks to Zainab only, is the qasam broken? No, because if he speaks to Khadija and Zainab, not Fatima, it's still broken because either, I'm not going to speak to either anyone in bracket A, bracket alif, nor I'm not going to speak to both of them together. So in this situation, his qasam only breaks when he speaks to both of them in bracket B, or he speaks to Fatima. Does this make sense? Now, why have they gone down the route? Like, for example, our Imma, they've taken the atf. So Imam Zufar is very easy to understand his reasoning. I'm not going to go very deep. It's very deep in the Hawashi, the Shuruhat. This masala is not mentioned in Nur Anwar. It's mentioned in Sarakhsi's Usool. But even there, I've not got my head fully around it. And there's lots of things. So, this is a masala. It's not mentioned in as-Shashi. So I'm not going to explain the reason, the differences. Yes? I'm not going to explain the reason for the differences. But just understand what's going on. Our Imma, what have they said? So Imam Zufar is very simple. Because Imam Zufar is included here. Our Imma Thalatha and Zufar. So Zufar has one policy, he applies it here and here. So he's very easy to understand. Farra applies the same reason here and here. And our Imma, I said it's a bit more deeper than that. So they said you do the atf, Imma Thalatha. You do the atf on the first one, you do the atf Fatima and Khadija together in the Talaq Masala, and you do the atf of Fatima and Khadija in the Al-Qalam Masala. Do you understand? Now why? You could try having a go in a hasha and the shuru, etc. But for now, I'm not going to go into the reason behind it. You understand the masala and all the different implications? What will happen? Hope you understand. Okay? Now let's go to the text. So we went through some of the text before. Now we're going to the rest. وَعَلَى هَذَا قَالَ Zufar. This is Zufar in regard to which masala? Masala 2.8. إِذَا قَالَ لَا أُكَلِّمُ هَذَا أَوْ هَذَا وَهَذَا. He's saying how would the art work? He's saying كان بمنزلة قوله لا أكلم أحد هذين وهذا. He's making the first two together in one bracket and then the last one separate. So therefore, I'm not going to speak to either one of these and these two. So basically, when this qasam break, when he does two things, speaks to هذا, the last one, and either of the first two. Yes? فلا يحنث ما لم يكلم أحد الأولين وثالث. His qasam will not break until he speaks to one of the first two and the third one. Clear? Are you following? لا أكلم, yes. وإننا أيما ثلاثة says لو كلم الأول وحده يحنث. Why do you do atf? They say in this masala the first one is by itself and last two together. So لا أكلم, basically لا أكلم هذا. I'm not going to do either of these two things. So if he does any one of them, speaks to هذا. If he does كلم الأول وحده يحنث, because you get the reason. And if he says ولو كلم أحد الآخرين لا يحنث ما لم يكلمهما, both of them, because you have to do jama' between the two of them. So I'm not going to do alif or ba. What's alif? Speak to this one. So if he does that, he's going to break. I'm not going to do ba, means speak to both of them. So ma lam yukallimhuma, as long as you not speak to both of them. Does that make sense? Yes. What's the reason for the differences? You can have a go at yourself later on. But it's not mentioned in Surah Shashi, so I'm not going to go through it. And I find it quite complicated myself. I've not fully understood it. So I'll just be honest with you so that anybody doing mutala or watching the videos will understand maybe. It's a bit difficult. So I tried doing it. Some people have mentioned rules regarding the taliq will mean singular and plural. Some have mentioned go down the reason of aw being umum. Some have gone to the aqrab. So there's different, I can translate things for you. Some say that the Sadhu Kalam Tanawul of the first one, but I have not got my head around it. So it is complicated. But you understand the masala? The reason I don't understand the reasoning, each person's logic and why they didn't tarjih. I understand the reason of each of them, but why they've changed it here and there, it's difficult. But that's the masala, and that's the implication of the masala. So if you take it at different places, you get different scenarios. The wujuhat of tarjih, why our imma, why they've done it, I don't understand. وَلَوْ قَالَ بِعْ هَذَا الْأَبْدَ أَوْ هَذَا. That's easy again, why? Because you have also hadul, mazkurain. وَكَانَ لَهُ أَنْ يَبِيعَ أَحَدَهُمَا أَيَّهُمَا شَاءَ. He can sell whichever one he wants. Yes? وَلَوْ دَخَلَ أَوْ فِي الْمَهْرِ. Now, let's say you do aw in mahr. What happens then? What does that mean? You do nikah. Either for, I am going to marry you either on this item or this item, this amount of money or that amount of money. What will happen now? According to this is fine. Nikah doesn't count. Why? Because for nikah, what's the shart? Ijab, qabul, and shuhud. Mahr is not a shart. So nikah will count. Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi says you will give a mahr mithl. And the reason is, لأن اللفظ يتناول أحدهما. Because we say على هذا أو على هذا. The loves means one of them, isn't it? أحد مذكورين. And the mujab al-asli mahr mithl. This is what you say. When you get married, because mahr, stipulating the mahr, tasmitul mahr is not what? A condition. So default, what's going to be the mahr? So mahr mithl is the default. The mahr that her family receives. The woman, her family, the average mahr that they receive is the mahr mithl. Do you understand? Now when you have this situation, you have this scenario. Astaghfirullah Rabbi. When you have this situation, this scenario, yes? You do ijab, qabul, witnesses, and the default is mahr mithl. If you do tasmiyah, you mention the mahr, that becomes the mahr. But the default is always going to be what? Mahr mithl. Fahim? So Abu Hanifa rahmatullah is saying this was in Nur al-Anwar. So the mahr mithl is the default. وَالْعُدُولُ أَنْهُ إِلَى الْمُسَمَّى. You only change from the mahr mithl to the musamma when there is a musamma ma'loom. Yes? Is the musamma ma'loom? Not fully, because hada or hada. So it's unknown. So therefore you say the tasmiyah is invalid and you go towards what? Mahr mithl. Are you following? Sahib have a different opinion. Do you understand? Now this text, فَيَتَرَجَّهُ مَا يُشَابِهُهُ, I'm not sure how that will give what resembles the mahr mithl will get preference. This is what Nur al-Anwar says is much easier to understand. But then it's not mahr mithl. So if he's saying whichever one is close to mahr mithl, that's not Imam Abu Hanifa's madhab. Imam Abu Hanifa's madhab is get mahr mithl. You following? Huh?
The asal mujab is mahr mithl.
In nikah. Yes.
So whichever one's closer to it.
Then that's another masala then. If you say, for example, the mahr mithl was £250, yes? Or let's say mahr mithl is £500 or 500 dirham. Ala hada is 400 and hada is 1000. Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah will say what? Okay, 500 because that's mahr mithl. Now this text seems to imply what? You give 400, that's aqrab. Yataraju ma yushabihuhu. But then that's not matching this. Are you following me? This is what he says here. So basically, according to Nur al-Anwar, it seems as if he's saying the masla is what? You just go towards the mahr mithl because, and even says, even this is saying you go to mahr mithl. So this last text is not, you probably have a ta'weel and say it means this, but really this last text is not adding up with that masla here. If this text means, it goes to the 400, possibly. But this is what it says, Nur al-Anwar. You just basically, you don't go from the aswad is mahr mithl, it's not a valid tasmiyah, then you just ignore it now. Understand? Acha. Example number 8. Acha. وَعَلَى هَذَا قُلْنَا التَّشَهُّدْ لَيْسَ بِرُكْنٍ فِي الصَّلَاةِ. Tashahhud is not a rukn in salah, it's a wajib. What's the reason? The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, إِذَا قُلْتَ هَذَا أَوْ فَعَلْتَ هَذَا. What do you say? When you say this, what does this mean? Huh? A tashahhud. So when you say tashahhud, أو فعلت هذا, what do you mean you say? فقد تمت صلاتك. What does أو mean? أحد المذكورين. So when you read tashahhud, or you do قعدة أخيرة. So the أو means what? One of two things. So which means when does salah become tam? When you do one of those two things. So that means that one is shart, one is a rukn, not both of them. Because ahadul madhkurain.
Could you not say that? You'll always do the fact of qa'da.
That's coming up. Yes? So allaqa, the Prophet ﷺ has put the itmam, that salah becomes tam bi ahadihima, when you do one of them. So therefore, both can't be a shart. Yes? Only one of them is shart. Ahadul madhkurain is a shart. So tamamus salah depends on one of the two of them. And everybody has agreed that what do you have to do? The qa'dah. So we know from the hadith word that what's the rukn? One of the two things. Yes? So it can't be both of them. So if somehow or the other we come to know that one is ma'loom, one is fixed, that becomes a rukn. And everybody says what's ittifaq? That what's compulsory? You have to sit. So which means that tashahhud is not then. So it goes in stages. The first stage is one of the two is compulsory. We've known that this one is not compulsory. We know this one is compulsory, so therefore it's not compulsory. Only one is compulsory. And then we've learned from other sources that the qa'dah is compulsory, so therefore that's not compulsory. Tashahhud. فَلَا يُشْتَرَطُ قِرَاءَةُ التَّشَهُّدِ. So tashahhud is not going to be a condition, it's going to be a wajib. Do you understand? Acha. There's another masla here. This should have come earlier. It could have come earlier. ثُمَّ هَذِهِ الْكَلِمَةِ. This kalima في مقام النفي يوجب نفي كل واحد من المذكورين. Yes? When you have aw, so in noon and waw, what they say here, that when you have a nafi, aw, the majazi meaning becomes waw. Are you following? When you have aw in a negative connotation, it means what? Aw, it means waw basically. What does this mean? If you say la ukallimu hadha aw hadha, what does this mean? As you mentioned before, I am not going to speak to either one of them, not or. So it's as if I'm not going to speak to him and him. So it's not, if you say wow, that means jama, not going to speak to both of them. If you say la ukallimu hadha wa hadha, what's going to happen? You have to speak to both of them to break your qasam. But if you have aw, meaning I'm not going to speak to either of you two. So he's saying here, in maqam nafi, when you have a negative sentence, then I'm not going to speak to him, I am not going to speak to him. So it is what yujibu nafya kulli wahidin madhkurain. Both things that become manfi. And in ithbat is ahadul madhkurain. And in nafi is kilal madhkurain. وفي الإثبات يتناول أحدهما مع صفة التخيير. What does it do? What does it do? It does إثبات يتناول أحدهما مع صفة التخيير. It includes one of them, but with the quality of with the صفة of تخيير. You have a choice. Are you following? Yes? I'm going to say خذ هذا أو ذا. Here, خذ هذا. Take one. What does that mean? If you take, unless I'm like we call it passive aggressive person, you take one of them. So well, you told me to take which one of them? You take one of them. I said, why take that one for? But you give me khiyar. أو means khiyar. You following? فهمت? كقولهم خذ هذا أو ذاك. What does this mean? So if you say خذ هذا أو ذاك, ذلك, what can you take? One. Or which one? Either. Based on this, وَمِن ضَرُورَةِ التَّخْيِيرِ, when you have a choice, that means that both of them are going to be permissible. Yes? So therefore, ضَرُورَةِ التَّخْيِيرِ, when you say that you have takhir, then both have to be permissible. So umumul ibaha. Ibaha meaning both of them being mubah is a necessity of takhir. Takhir necessitates that both of them become mubah. Do you understand? Acha. قال الله تعالى فكفارته. The kafara is what? إطعام عشرة مساكين من أوسط ما تطعمون أهليكم أو كسوتهم أو تحرير رقبة. So what does this mean? How many is compulsory? أحد المذكورين. Number one. Do you have a takhir? Yes. And all three are mubah. Fahim? Acha. Another hukam we have here is that sometimes aw comes in the meaning, another one majazi meaning of aw is what? What's the majazi meaning of aw? Hatta. When does this happen? It's not mentioned in the text, but mentioned noon, and why it's very important to have this one. When you take aw to mean hatta, when awwalul kalam is mumtad salihan lil ghaya, meaning the word before aw is a fi'l on action that extends. It's long. Yes, it's extendable action. And what is after it, meaning, and it can have an ending point. Are you following? And number two is that the ma'tuf and the ma'tuf alayh. One is ism, one's a fa'il, one's a madhi, one's mudari, one's muthbat, one's manfi. They don't match in aw. Because when you have a aw, it's hard for ma'tuf and ma'tuf. So they both have to be isms, or both are fa'il, both are madhi, both are muthbat, both are manfi. If it's like different, it's like this aw doesn't match. So it is. So then we say this aw means hatta if it fits. For example, we're not going into the detail of this tafsir, but just simply says here that in this example, it says laysa laka min al-amri shay. This is ma'tuf alayh. أو يتوب عليهم. What's the ma'tuf alayh ma'tuf? You get it? It's not matching up in ismiyah. So they say here this always in the meaning of what? Ila'an. Now I'm not going to go deep into tafsir, but basically this is giving a dalil from the Quran that what happens, that you have the dalil where the word aw can come in the meaning of what? Hatta. Based on this, he goes on to the next example. So قِيلَ مَعْنَهُ حَتَّى يَتُوبَ عَلَيْهِمْ. When tafsir is here, aw means hatta. So we know from the Quran you can have hatta, and there's tafsir in this. We do that in Jalalain inshallah. Okay? Now based on the rule, now we know that aw can come in the meaning of hatta when aw doesn't fit. We say here, قال أصحابنا لو قال لا أدخل هذه الدار أو أدخل هذه الدار. Now the first jumla is what? Manfi. Second one is. So it doesn't seem to match. So this aw means what? I will not enter this house until I enter the second house. If you take aw in haqiqi meaning, when will the qasam break? When the qasam break? Remember aw is umum. Any house you will enter. Exactly, it's not aw. It's meaning hatta. Had it for being for aw, it would mean that you can't enter either house. If you enter either house, the qasam breaks. But because aw is not in the meaning of aw, is in the meaning of hatta. So therefore, you have to, I will not enter this house until I enter that house. So which house must be entered first? This must be entered first. This must be entered second. Because this becomes after this ghaya, the ending point, the thing. So therefore, because aw means hatta, what do we say? Aw is in mana hatta. So therefore, لو دخل الأولى أولا. What does it say? لو دخل الأولى. Huh? Then? Hanatha. Huh?
If you enter the manfi one, you break the first.
Yeah. So he said, I will not enter this house until I enter that house. I'll enter this one first. So if he goes against that, he enters this one first. Then he breaks it off. And he says, وَلَوْ دَخَلَ ثَانِيَةً أَوَّلًا بَرَّ فِي يَمِينِهِ. Because he said, I want to enter this house first, and then I want to enter this house until I enter this house. Are you following? And another example is, وَبِمِثْلِهِ, if he says, لَا أُفَارِقُكَ مُثْبَتْ نَفِي حَتَّى تَقْضِيَ دَيْنِي. Yes? It's the meaning, hatta. I'm not going to leave you until you fulfill my loan. يَكُونُ بِمَعْنَى حَتَّى تَقْضِيَ دَيْنِي. It would mean what? Until you fulfill my loan. Because now we have ikhtilaf in the ithbat and the nafi, and the aw doesn't have the haqiqi meaning. So the majazi meaning is going to be hatta. So therefore in these situations is going to take that meaning inshallah. Does everybody understand? Subhanallah wa bihamdi subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.